right, everybody. Welcome to this very special VC Lab event. My name is Mike Supervici. I am the head of acceleration at VC Lab. And VC Lab is an accelerator for venture capital firms. To date, we have helped launch over 200 venture capital firms. And our program is free and is accepting applications now for the next cohort, which is cohort 8. If you're interested in venture capital in general, just know that we do these events every single week. So make sure that you subscribe because we try to bring out, alumni like you see here and all sorts of other types of experts to be able to try to help in any way that we can. As a matter of fact, next week we're doing a very tactical webinar on the 5 steps to basically launch a venture capital firm. So make sure that you subscribe to these types of events and get notified. As we started launching venture capital firms, the reason we were doing this in particular is because we really want to democratize access to this asset class, right? For various types of folks, various types of demographics, geography, and so on, right? Over so far today, 66% of alumni that have graduated VC Lab are outside the United States, and we're very proud of that. Over 25% of VC Lab alumni are managed by women versus the 2 or 3%, which is what the current market looks like right now. And we want to continue that path. And that's why we basically launched this initiative, which is called the Female Venture 50. And the idea is that we want to make sure that we get the asset class to be at 50% female GP, right? And we do that through various educational events like this. We do that by making sure that we try to help and highlight any sort of alumni that's basically working through that and starting that, because we think it's really important that this entire asset class is basically democratized and is accessible to anyone from everywhere and so on and so on. Okay, and that's what's going to lead to like the next generation of founders also kind of having a similar profile in our opinion. Okay, so before we get to the panel, so today we're going to have a really awesome panel. You're going to be able to ask the folks here, questions, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that to get your questions out, and then you're even going to be able to see and talk to them in a more intimate setting, in a basically kind of like a breakout table. And so, just FYI, you're going to have ample opportunity to talk to the folks here. But before I do that, let me just quickly read a little bit of a disclaimer, just because, this is a financial type of event. So, the content presented today is not directed at any investors or potential investors, and that does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any securities. All right. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the panel. So let's go ahead and maybe start with a quick, brief set of introductions. Genevieve, maybe you can start introducing yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope everyone can hear me okay. My name is Genevieve LeMarchal. I am the managing partner of Suncoast Ventures and also the head of healthcare at Expert Dojo. I'm based in Southern California, but my team is actually all over the United States and hopefully eventually the world. I was an entrepreneur for many years before getting into venture capital. I usually like to tell people I love entrepreneurs. I work with entrepreneurs. I will always work with entrepreneurs, even if I'm not a VC. Prior to launching Suncoast, I was a founder of an organization called Accelerate Funds. I was a GP of a small fund based in Oregon, and then I hopped over into medtech, life sciences, and that industry, which I never thought I would get into, but I always had a deep desire. But I don't have a PhD or any background in medicine whatsoever. When I joined an IP-focused fund focused on new science and deep tech, and I didn't know at the time, but that's where I met my team. That's where I gathered a lot of the expertise and knowledge that I needed that would eventually become Suncoast. So happy to be here.
Amazing. Illaria?
Yeah, hello. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Illaria Fava. I'm Italian. I'm the managing partner of Untitled Venture, a seed fund based in Italy. My story before, being managing partner of Artemisia is being a corporate lawyer for more than 20 years for top international law firm, and then working as an angel investor initially, and then since 4 years, having founded Beyond Venture, which is a vehicle through which I catalyzed the investment of some high net worth individuals in Italy, being part of my professional network, and being far from investing in startup, but very interested too. I'm part of the ecosystem since many years. I'm also a member of the Italian ecosystem, startup ecosystem, in particular, supporting the Room startup ecosystem and being part of the Room Association, and also the Women Association Gamma Donna, which is keen in supporting women entrepreneurship. And that's it.
Awesome. Jennifer?
Mike, thanks for having me, and thank you for all the support of women in VC. I'm Jen O'Daniel. I'm a managing partner at Gnostic Ventures. For the last 15 years or so, I've been making pre-seed and seed stage investments for state government-backed funds, where I've led about 50 deals, helped company raise about $1 billion, including 4 unicorns and over a dozen exits. I host a biweekly Zoom coffee panel for startups featuring VCs from across the country, and I formerly co-hosted a popular weekly cybersecurity podcast for Cyberscoop.
And last but not least, Jessica?
Hello, and apologies for crazy camera malfunctions. I'm so sorry. This has never happened before. I'm Jessica, managing partner of Coyote Ventures, based in San Francisco. And I've been out here for about 10 years, originally from West Texas, and moved out here after dropping out of a PhD in biochemistry to work at Impossible Foods as an early employee. I was there for 6 years, helping develop and launch the Impossible Burger. Then went on to work with about a dozen companies, mostly startups, on helping them with their product strategy and launch. And so, yes, also coming from entrepreneur and founder-friendly lens, and just seeing venture capital as an important gateway for the products that get launched.
So honored to just be here with you all today, and really thank you so much for sharing your story. So, a big part of the audience is really interested in how to make the step into becoming a venture capitalist. Any sort of advice on the process? And I'd like everybody here on the panel to maybe answer this question, starting with Jennifer.
Sure. So I think it's a lot about networking, and I think there's 3 distinct networks that you have to build. The first one is investors, angel investors, other VCs, people who are going to fund your companies, but also are going to provide you deal flow. The second network you need to build is potential customers, the kinds of companies that are going to purchase product from the kinds of companies that you're interested in investing in. And you need that both from a diligence perspective and, of course, helping the company find customers. And then the third network is startup founders, right? Having a great network of companies. With that, the sort of 3 networks you build, you're able to show value that you add. So you can start introducing founders to the right angel investors and VC companies, so you can really start making a name for yourself.
What are your thoughts, Jessica? Any sort of advice from your end?
Yeah, that I totally agree with what Jennifer just said. And I would say on top of that, getting some experience, whether it's on the startup side or ideally also on the investing side. So before launching a fund, you can do some angel investing or get some experience with another fund. There's a ton of fellowship opportunities out there. And so get some experience while you're building that network. And I would say also start to develop your thesis within that experience as well, and talk about it as much as you can, get some feedback, and that'll really drive building the network that Jen was mentioning.
Genevieve?
Well, of course, those two, I just want to pile onto that a little bit and say, I think it's extremely important going into fundraising as well as building your team and operationalizing your fund to figure out your why. You need to really figure out what's driving you, what's inspiring you, and what will inspire people to work with you. And it has to be an extremely strong conviction. I don't think that high returns and simply investing is enough, not nowadays. Talented people have a lot of options. Investors have a lot of options. There's tons of competition. So you've got to believe in your mission. for becoming an investor so strongly that you're willing to fight for it every day, that you'll go to the mat for it, where you just really refuse to accept a world where the status quo, whatever that is allowed to exist. And, you know, especially on a first fund, people aren't going to invest in you because of your track record. Even if you have a track record of investing, which I think many of us did and do, that's not why people will invest in your fund. People will invest in you because of your passion and your drive, and because they believe in you. And this is especially true if you don't already have a big network of LPs. So I get really grounded into that.
Illaria, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with Genevieve. I must say that I believe that you have to combine somewhat the two elements. I mean, you clearly, you know, it's a matter of passion and a matter of story to be coherent, and you have to be also the first to invest in yourself. So basically to act coherently, that's what I try to do. Also, you know, starting from angel investing to becoming shareholders of Beyond Ventures. So investing in myself also in order to create my own track record. And then also the other element, I think it's to work as and to single out well what you call also, you know, in VisiLab, the connectors, because we all can work as a connector. So being a connector and finding out other people who can be both a connectors as, you know, for fundraising activity as well as for deal flow, it's really key and essential. And we can all play an essential role in supporting each other and in finding out the right deal, and also understanding where the right passion is.
Amazing. You know, I noticed that quite a few people have joined us here as well. So it looks like we have a very, very good critical mass. If you missed the first part of this, there's a Q&A tab on the right. So feel free to add questions for the panel there. And I'm happy to go ahead and start sending them over to the panel as well. We're doing this for you. So add any sort of questions there, and I'm happy to go ahead and review them as well. While you do that, you know, we did start discussing this at the beginning. You know, the part of our mission is really to try to get the entire asset class to basically get to really as close to 50-50 ratio of female GPs in the VC industry. Can you share your perspective on why we need more female GPs? Jessica, maybe we can start with you on this one.
Of course, and the actual number right now, I believe, is 15% female GP. So there is a way to go, but it's a start. And as probably all of you have seen, about 2% of the venture capital money went into only female founded teams in 2021, which was actually down from 2020. So just those numbers alone are reasons, but I have one example as well. So as I said, venture capital money is also like what decides what products can launch and scale often. And there's been an interesting sort of set of articles recently about the failure of the electric scooter industry. And just using this as an example alone, there's been about $5 billion globally poured into this industry. And yet in the US, only about 70% of the riders are 70% are men. So the other 30% in most cities are others. And there's been definitely like accidents and some, you know, issues with these things in the cities, and just showing that the money is really sort of pouring into specific things that only one set of people, like homogenous people, are deciding to fund. Whereas in the products themselves, they're not always designed with inclusivity in mind. And that's just one example. Obviously, there's a lot more that we could go down on that road with.
What are your thoughts, Genevieve?
Absolutely that. I think you put that really great. I have never liked what I call militant feminism. I believe in equity, and I think that saying we need more women because women are better is not the way that we should think about it. I think that we need more women because women are different. We think different than men, we operate different than men, and we have entirely different experiences and worldviews. And this is what creates diversity of thought, diversity of access, and ultimately performance. And I think the most powerful combination in the world is a combination of women and men, cultures and backgrounds. And what's really sad is, you know, I know we're at 15% women in this industry, and that's better than it was, you know, 5 years ago. I think it was like 7 or something. But, you know, I don't see this in the industry often when I am interacting with male VCs, which is kind of always been perplexing to me. All male investing teams oftentimes have me sort of scratching my head for reasons that, like the scooter thing that Jessica just said. I think, I often think, why would we invest in a red ocean simply because we're comfortable with it? So having diversity of thought at the table is ultimately what leads to smart investing. It leads us to find gaps. It leads us to be willing to take a broader view of the landscape and invest in things that are going to make sense for a broad and impact more people. And I think that if we don't have women at the table alongside men, then the odds of creating a competitive advantage are much lower. And so until there is equity in this industry, investing in women will always be a competitive advantage.
What are your thoughts, Illaria?
Well, I think, diversity, brings value. I mean, it has been proven. In all cases. So in particular, it is clear so far that, for all the analysis which have been carried out, that women, basically investment in women for several reasons, bring higher returns, and in particular at lower deviation, which is an essential key element. So basically, women-led companies are less risky for the same, given same results. So basically, in this time, even more, it's not just a principle of diversity; it's a principle of, ensuring the different approach also at assessing investment, but also at risk, and further, it's clear that there is a gap. I'm not speaking just about the VC, also at, alternative investment, there is a significant gap. And there is also a significant correlation between the leadership of the VC fund with the investment made. I mean, look at Italian, for example, where, this percentage is even better than other, still very low, but even better than other realities. But, 85% of capital deployed by Italian funds is by all men. It's two all men funders, and 87% of the Italian VC funds are led by men. So this is really a strict correlation between the two. I'm not saying that it must be like this at all. And so we need, but I think that more diversity brings value also to good initiatives which so far are not met, and so there is an untapped potential for women-led and diverse, founders. Kim.
Jennifer, what do you think?
Sure, I think it was pretty well covered already by my fellow panelists. But I'll just add that, look, 50% of purchasing power is done by women. 50% of an enterprise software company's customers are going to be women. At least 50% of consumer products revenue are going to come from women. And so I think it's really important that women have a voice at the table in making the decisions and helping these companies grow.
Just a couple more questions. I see quite a few are coming into the Q&A, and I'm going to switch over to that in a second. And, this one, feel free, anybody can answer these, and not everybody has to answer any of these couple of questions I'm going to ask here. But, what about like female LPs? Any trends that you're observing there with regards to that sector? Go, Jen.
Suncoast has 30% female LPs. And that's a number that I'm extremely proud of. I'm seeing the number go up. I think that, though, that women investors are more correlated with something that is impact related, or that they don't seem as aligned with purely financial returns as some just male investors tended to be. And that's from a very, very small pool of data of my own fundraising and experience.
Totally agree. I mean, same, same sentiment. I mean, same view I had from my scenario. So they're definitely more interested to other elements rather than pure financial returns. And also they bring their expertise and support, in a different manner. And also I believe that, that's really good also, working alongside with men and with diversity brings value to each, LP member, so to the VC team as a whole, and also to the funder itself. So because it's a different way to bring value, to evaluate, but also to evaluate also the ability and so to give support to the companies, portfolio companies.
And also I'll add on the sort of high net worth individual side, about 60% of the wealth is controlled by women, but only about half of them are actually investing. And so there's actually an opportunity to educate more women on investing, because a majority of them say that a main reason they're not investing is the lack of education and understanding. And I know I myself have been teaching a lot of women on that side. And then as you move up to family offices, there's actually only about less than 5% of CEOs at family offices are female. So getting more diversity into family offices, as well as at the institutional side. And so I had this stat here to read. The Knight Foundation said that diverse managers oversee only 1.3% of the 69 trillion in institutional assets under management. And so there's definitely a need for diversity all across this ecosystem.
So I belong to a dinner club that's made up of GPs and LPs, and it's all women. And I'll note that the number of female LPs is definitely been growing over the years. I do think, at the end of the day, I think we need to be careful about sort of falling in the trap about talking about investing in female GPs as impact investing, because our returns are just as good. And I think sometimes when we refer to it as impact, the immediate thought in people's head is, oh, well, they're picking that over somebody else, and the ROI is not going to be as good.
Yeah, I would like to mirror that. That's one of the reasons too I haven't experienced launching a fund before that was all focused around the gender lens. And unfortunately, the experience that I had at that time was sort of like, oh, this is cute. And it was like a pat on the head and a little bit of money. And I said, not this time. Like, we're going to just be a high performing fund. And then we're going to, later on, we'll say, oh, and we also happen to be women. And we also happen to have invested in women. But leading with performance, leading with returns has always been, I fully align with what you said.
Final question for me here to the panel. Again, anybody can answer this one. Any final, any sort of advice for future female GPs that are considering launching a firm right now? Anything you can share? Any kind of words of wisdom?
I would say meet as many people as you can. Work harder than everybody else. That's how you're successful. That's true of every gender as well. But just work really hard and build your network, and build your network as early as you can.
I think also being intentional about how you're building it. So I know, some of the male counterparts will go golf together, and there's certain activities that we don't naturally get invited to. And so I think being intentional on how you're networking, how you're meeting people, and not being sort of offended that you're not at these other activities, but it does happen. It is real. And there are other sort of ways to connect with people, whether it's hosting, your own events and happy hours, and things like that.
But also don't be afraid to join the cigar meeting. There's one that happens quarterly. I go. I don't smoke cigars. I have zero interest in it, but I go for the network and I stay for a little bit. There's also another one happens over skeet shooting. And another one happens in the range. I go to that stuff. I'm usually the only woman in the room, but it also provides me a little bit of advantage because everybody wants to talk to me.
Yeah, I'll mirror that. Don't be afraid. I know sometimes I will walk into a room often and just feel my immediate response that I have is I don't belong here. And, you got to just tell yourself that self-talk, I do belong here. Go to the golf tournament, go to the skeet shooting range, go to those things. And just know, these men, they're often delighted to have you. And it is there sometimes things that are going on that are unfair? Yes. But I would say, 80% of the time, 85% of the time, they're delighted to have you and they want to accept you. So for me, for the networking process, as you're getting out there, you're talking with people, just know like you are good. You're really good at what you do and you have something to offer. And then, the fundraising process and the networking process is all about telling stories. You're not looking for the money, you're looking for the believers. And, you can eventually talk about performance and you can eventually talk about all the things and, yuck it up. But it starts with finding the people who see the horizon the same way you do and the possibilities for the future the same way you do. And those people will become your initial tribe. And they are the people who will help you get it off the ground. So go out and look for them.
Yeah, I would say build your own story and build, like, and let it, really be your, be your own. And so, create, look for the believers, are just Genevieve just said. But first of all, be the first one to believe in yourself and to work on achieving your goal.
Amazing. There's quite a lot of questions coming in from the audience now, so I'm going to just go ahead and switch over there. And right now there's a question here, and honestly, I see several questions that are going around the same kind of theme here, which is, can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that you faced during the fundraising process and how you overcame them? And anybody can answer this question.
So I was out raising a fund for my prior fund, and I can remember distinctly having a meeting with somebody who just looked right at me and said, "Hey, if I haven't known you since like 1980 something, I can't do business with you." And then I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't born yet, or I was a little kid. And then I can remember distinctly remembering somebody who said, look, I'm just not going to do business with you because you're female. I don't trust you. And so, I brought a male counterpart in to have the meeting with him because, I would still take his money. But, certainly people sometimes will take you, especially when you're talking about a very much older generation of high net worth individuals, they might take you a little bit less serious. And, I found over time, if you just hit them with your numbers right up front, they really can't argue with that. They start thinking of you in a different light, right? You leave the sort of being a woman behind, and they start thinking about you as the person who, raised your company as $1 billion, or you have X unicorns in your portfolio, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I would say have a really, really resilient mindset, because there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of just kind of non-responsive occurrences. And so having to sort of wake up every day and not be upset about those things and just keep going, keep finding the people that you're really aligned with. But, there is a lot of mental work and like mental health that's associated with keeping this positive mindset, because you're out there for a really long time usually.
If I can bring my contribution, I would say bring facts and let the facts speak for yourself. If you do actions and, let the actions speak, even, the older people, older generation, and, let's say more traditional, less female oriented kind of, empowerment people, that just believe, because it's not female or man, it's just what you've done, what you believe in. And that's, a story that can convince them, because it's your passion and you have the ability to lead that to success. So
I would say for me, what really worked is just kind of what I call the law of abundance. And this is in deal flow, this is in your network, and this is also with your LPs. When I started this process, I didn't have a huge LP network. So it was really hard to have that abundance mindset and to cultivate that. Also, I had to do a lot of work with my team for everyone to cultivate abundance mindset. But once we got there, having that law, like, if this person says no, that person's saying yes, and just being able to coach myself up, coach my team up, and know that we had an abundant portfolio of opportunities with investors to explore. So then, I could come out and basically say my formula is I'm going to connect with people authentically about our vision. Then I'm going to hit them with my track record. Then we're going to talk about the facts, and then I'm moving on. And I think that it was like, it's sort of like people follow the moving light. And so if you're just sort of sitting there being like, are you going to invest? Are you going to invest? You just got to keep it moving. And so find a way to cultivate abundance in all areas, with deal flow and also with investors.
Any advice on preparing for the fundraising process? We've talked a little bit about like building out the network. Everybody here is kind of like given some really good actionable insights on that. Any other thoughts? Anything else that you can think of with regards to like preparing for the process?
I think also having your thesis really built out and having potentially some examples of companies that would go, that you would want to invest in right away. I think that really helps. Is keep talking to founders, keep landscaping, understanding the landscape, and we could warehouse some deals and really talk about those.
I think that also create.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. I think that also creating strong relationship with other person, part of your network that already did it. It's very good way, to know where, to prepare best. It's just having suggestion from them, using, part of their network if they want to share, know and how, their difficulties, which will be yours. It's really part of the process, which will make it easier, I think.
If you're investing in certain industries, make sure you understand those industries well. Make sure you're walking into a meeting as, other than with the company actually building that product, but make sure you're walking to a meeting with that LP, knowing that market better than they do, knowing the industry better than they do. So when they ask you questions, you look smart.
I would say mental health. This is going to be extreme. You have to be extremely resilient. I think resilience is one of my best qualities that I have, and this tested my resilience a lot. And so I would, really get yourself, to that point, as well as get. I had something happen to me during the fundraising process. I was diagnosed with a pretty severe case of long COVID, and the way that it hit me was like short-term memory loss and terrible brain fog, awful fatigue. And I had to try to fundraise during this, and it was horrible. And luckily I have an amazing team and great support, and we were able to push through it. But had I have not had that support, my physical health would not have been able to withstand me getting over the line. And we did have a botched close during this process. One closing went sideways once. And so, for that, I would also say get a coach to help you. VC Lab is great. I sleep better knowing that I've got them. Like I would probably be a basket case if I didn't. But also, find somebody to coach you who's not your team, who's not your partners, someone who's there to really help you get over the line, who you can go and see and talk with, and who's done this before ideally and can really connect with you, because it's going to be hard. Even when it's not as hard as it could be, it's still going to be hard.
There's a question here. There's an interesting question. So, funding has dropped 2% according to PitchBook, but the number of deals has gone up. And, Cindy's asking, how do we move away from what appears to be kind of a checkbox change into an actionable change? And this is in the PitchBook article she's referring to, is with regards to female European founders. So any thoughts there? Any comments?
Can you repeat the question, Mike? It wasn't clear to me.
Yeah. So, basically, the appears that the funding has dropped a little bit, but the number of deals has gone up. It seems that the PitchBook data is showing that a lot of it is not going to female founders. Any comments on how we can fix that, how we can change that in the future?
Yeah. Well, Europe, it hasn't. Yeah. really the downturn which we saw on the stock exchange hasn't really hit Europe that much, basically, in terms of, valuation, which, at least in the first trimester kept growing, and also overall amount of deal or downside deal, which remained basically pretty there. But, it's true that female-led companies, and in general, female were more hit, let's say, by this crisis. So I think we should, that's why basically more fund led by women are very, essential for diminishing these, and instead reducing this. But this is part also of the policy of the European Commission, so which is working on that, which is, there are a lot of funds coming on the market, from Italy, for example, but also for the European Commission. So I think this is a very good time for, this issue at least is starting to be considered very seriously, and, funds are being, deployed for solving this.
I fully expect that the number of venture dollars going into women, if we head into a recession, is going to drop. And I think the reason for that is because angel funding will drop, and it'll be a little bit more scarce. And, and what we know about angel investors is they typically invest for more than just an ROI. Often they're investing in people who remind them of themselves. And so if more angel investors are male, then we're going to see more male-led companies get angel funding, which means that women-led companies will grow a little bit slower, just because they're not getting that infusion of capital from angel investors, and that sort of just trickles up the industry.
There's quite a lot of questions left in the Q&A. Everybody here, all of the managing partners that you're seeing here are going to have their own breakout session, and you're going to be able to go ahead and just ask them many of these questions or others in a more intimate setting in about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so just I'm not going to be able to ask everybody's question here, but just know that you'll be able to do that basically in 3 minutes. The last question we always like to ask in these kind of webinars before we move on to kind of like networking, is like, and again, I'd love to have everybody on the panel answer this one. Given what you know now, right, what would you have done differently? And maybe we can start with Genevieve on this one. Any kind of advice?
I knew it. What would I have done different? So I fell very prey to what Mike and Adeo will teach you about in VC Lab called LP love. And, we landed a couple, a large fish LP, and that made me complacent. I was like, we got this. I'm good. We didn't have it. I wasn't good. And I just did not think, this is the first time doing this, that, I 100% believe they were going to come in. They 100% believe they were going to come in. A series of things occurred and they didn't come in. And I ended up losing that investor out of my pipeline while I was quarantined with a severe case of COVID. It was terrible. And it ended up with this, whole thing, and I almost quit. And I probably would have, had it not been for my partner, Charlotte, basically like giving me an ultimatum while I ugly cried, and so but, and then I picked myself up and, adopted the law of abundance and got myself a coach and got my act together and got the fund over the line. But it would not have happened. I should have done that in the first place with the big fish. And then if if they came in, great. And if they didn't, we would have been okay too. And modeled 2 different fund strategies with them, without them, which would have been okay. So a lot of people are going to tell you you're amazing. They love you. You're so great. Just hear this. Your words are moving, or your lips are moving. It's only about who's actually coming into the fund.
Illaria?
Well, yeah, I think the same. I mean, I basically created, my track record by creating my own vehicle, which is Beyond, so as to, I get, doing investments and getting track record, and also getting investors in there, which are basically the backbone of, LPs in Artemisia. So I think that creating your network, building trust relationship with, all your professional network, letting you be known, for your investing abilities and for being reliable, and all what you need for being a good MVP is just essential. And going and creating your network also outside of what your usual kind of environment, but also finding the way to be yourself known. So in all the possible way. I personally also write articles, supporting the ecosystem, entering into detail. So that's often, a situation where people tell me, oh, I really agree with what you wrote. And that's part of the trust which you need to build to establish a relationship in general, and also to communicate trust on the other side, and to start eventually to have an LP on board.
Jennifer, what are your thoughts?
Sure. I would say that, what I would do differently is probably follow Mike and Adeo's advice on meet with many people, and really sort of block out your calendar to just be taking meetings after meetings. And, I didn't take as many meetings as I should have. And so that's what I would, if I could go back in the Wayback Machine, that's what I probably would do. I would schedule more meetings.
And last but not least, Jessica.
Again, sorry for the video. So many learnings, happy to share more. But one concrete thing that Genevieve has also alluded to is getting the coach. And also I did a media training, and I feel like that really helped. I've done a ton of meetings, but I felt like having a coach that's actually like how to design controlling meetings, as well as speaking better, and also little things like having a more neutral background. I actually had to like reshift my room a few times, my office. And so I think those are some concrete things you can do to get help on maximizing the amazing meetings that you're already scheduling.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for these incredible insights. I learned a ton from you all. I'm super just honored to be sharing this floor with you and working with you on all this, on helping you launch these enduring venture capital firms. As a next step, everybody, we're going to end the panel now, and the screen is going to shift to kind of a set of tables. So think of it just like any other conference where you would just take a seat at a table. Each of the managers that you see here is going to have their own table. And then you can go ahead and jump in and ask them questions in a more intimate setting, turn on your video, and just kind of have a conversation. And so I strongly encourage you to go ahead and visit everybody here. Feel free to bounce around as well. So if you've got a question answered, feel free to go to another table and just meet as many folks as possible. This is designed to really amplify everybody's networking that's joining us here today. So with that being said, thank you, everybody. Really epic panel. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the other side.